This is the section that you have been waiting for. How to update the screens, get rid of the clutter, and bring a smile to everyone who uses Salesforce. Welcome to part 6 of our 6-part series on how to clean your Salesforce org. In this unit, I'm going to explain how to clean up your user interface. This includes your navigation, your home page, and your record page layouts. In case you missed the prior installments, go check them out now. In part 1, we focused on understanding your business processes. In part 2, we focused on cleaning your Salesforce users. In part 3, we covered your data architecture. In part 4, we reviewed our Salesforce integrations. In part 5, we reviewed how to clean up your Salesforce data. And in this unit, we're going to focus on the user interface, all of the visual elements that your users look at when they're logged into Salesforce. Yes, we're talking about those darn cluttered screens that make your users want to pull their hair out. You know what I'm talking about. All of those fields that nobody uses, all of those related lists that nobody understands, all of those confusing fields with similar or nearly identical names like type and category right next to each other. I'm going to teach you how to take care of these items once and for all. By the way, if you haven't done so already, make sure to download the PDF handout that accompanies this section, as I believe that you will find it handy to follow up with some of the items covered in this video. For those of you who don't already know me, I'm David Giller. I'm a Salesforce MVP, consultant, and trainer. In order to simplify the user interface in Salesforce, we're going to break this down into a couple of steps. The first one is field updates. On each object in Salesforce, we have the fields like name, address, phone number, and all of those gazillion other custom fields that nobody really understands. You're going to navigate into Setup, and then drill into any object, and then look at all of the fields that we have for that object. And then we need to do the following. First, we're going to review the field level security on each individual field in order to either hide or control the edit permissions on that specific field for specific users within your organization. You're going to look at each field and decide whether or not it should be required. You're going to review and update pick list values on each of your drop-down fields. You're going to think about any default values that perhaps we should be utilizing where appropriate in order to help eliminate extra clicks for your users. We're going to look at any fields that are not being used by anyone on the team in order to simply eliminate them entirely. We're going to populate the help text feature in each field that your users find either confusing or are perhaps simply using inappropriately to give them the guidance needed to better use those fields as intended. Next, we're going to do some page layout updates. Once you have addressed all of the field attributes, you need to review each of the page layouts that you have in each object in Salesforce. Hey, don't blame me if you notice that maybe you have 25 different page layouts on the opportunities object. I didn't create them, and if you actually followed the steps that I recommended in the prior sections of this series, you would have actually identified whether or not all of those page layouts are even warranted. You would have already eliminated the page layouts that are either not assigned or simply unnecessary within your organization. Once you do drill into each page layout, you need to review and update the order, the sequencing of the fields displayed on the screen in a way that makes sense to your end users. You're going to organize the related fields into logical sections, groupings, and you're going to use descriptive section names on your page layouts. You're going to order your sections on the page layout in order to make both data entry and viewing of records simple and logical, showing the most important information near the top of the screen. You're going to customize your related lists in order to ensure that the most appropriate fields are displayed on each of those related lists. And on each of the related lists, give some thought to decide how do you want those records sorted. Do you want them sorted maybe alphabetically, sequentially by date created or last modified, with either the oldest record showing up on top or the newest record showing up on top? And by the way, while we're on the topic of related lists, let's identify those related lists that are completely not needed, either not needed by anyone in the organization or not needed by specific users within the organization based on their role and responsibilities within the company. Next, we're going to focus on list view updates. After you have reviewed and updated all of your page layouts on every object, you need to now go back and look at all of the list views that you have on each object. So for each object in Salesforce, you should review those publicly accessible list views in order to decide which list views are not being used and perhaps should be deleted entirely to bring some simplicity and cleanliness to the screens in Salesforce. You're also going to think about what specific list views are appropriate to push out as the admin to specific groups of users within your organization. You're going to review all of the names for each list view to make sure that they make sense for any new team member that might join the organization. Next, we're going to focus on reports. You need to identify all of the reports that are not being used by anyone in the organization. If you ran Optimizer like I suggested in several of the prior units, you would have already received a very clear and distinct list of all of those reports in your Salesforce instance that no one in your organization is accessing. You can now take each of those reports and do one of two things. You can either move them into a single consolidated archived folder, or you might decide to just delete them entirely. Salesforce navigation apps. When using a particular app in Salesforce, chances are that there are some default tabs appearing across the top of the screen that no one uses. Heck, there might even be other tabs that are not displayed at the top of the screen that users are currently quietly frustrated about because they struggle how to navigate and find those tabs today. What you're going to do is you're going to drill into each of those Salesforce apps in order to review the tabs that are included in the navigation. If you did everything that I suggested in the prior units, you know who your users are, what their processes are, what sections of Salesforce, what features of Salesforce they're using, so you would already know which apps they're relying on and what tabs are most appropriate to display for them across their navigation on the top of the screen. So essentially, you're going to identify which tabs within the app could be eliminated from the navigation, which ones should be added onto the navigation, and also remember to think about the sorting of those tabs. Let's put the ones that are most utilized towards the left of the navigation bar, and those that are rarely or less often utilized more towards the right of the navigation bar. Next, we're going to look at App Exchange apps, otherwise referred to as installed packages. Come on, let's face it. I'm willing to bet that you've got all sorts of really cool App Exchange apps that someone installed way back when, but then decided that they weren't needed as soon as the next shiny new thing came around, and those apps were installed, never removed, nobody's using them, everyone forgot about them, and it's creating a little bit of technical debt clutter in your Salesforce. So go ahead and look at all of the installed managed packages that you have in Salesforce. Identify which ones are not being used and just uninstall them. Heck, You might even uncover some apps that your company is still paying for, where you can call up to cancel the subscription while uninstalling the app and maybe save your company some money at the same time. Now let's talk about the homepage. We're going to review each of the Lightning components on the homepage in order to determine if they are appropriate, if they're located in the most practical place, and whether or not additional or different components should be on the homepage. Also, in Lightning experience, it is rarely necessary to have more than one homepage for your users. Now that each Lightning component has the functionality to control the visibility, to make it either dynamically visible or hidden based on various attributes of the user. Maybe you want certain report charts or rich text components appearing on the homepage just for specific users. Not a problem. No coding is needed in order to set that up as an admin. Now there are some additional areas where you can control some of the user interface settings to help your users. In Settings, simply navigate over to the user interface page and make sure that you have done the following. Enable inline editing. Enable enhanced lists. Enable collapsible sections. Enable hover details. And that wraps it up for this unit. Make sure to download the PDF handout that accompanies this section, as it contains lots of helpful resources to help you learn even more about some of the features and admin controls that I mentioned in this particular unit. That's it for me. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the Salesforce community.